They say a house never forgets, and the first thing I learned about the Blackwood house was that it remembered everything. Every scream, every prayer, every moment when someone realized too late that they were no longer alone. On the night of October 17th, 1998, when I stepped across its threshold, I still believed fear was something you could control, something you could explain away with logic. But that belief died less than an hour later, right there on the rotting hardwood floor when the door slammed shut behind me, even though no wind was blowing and no one else was inside. The town of Blackwood, Massachusetts was the kind of place people passed through without stopping, a place with more gravestones than newborns, where everyone locked their doors before sunset and never spoke about the house at the end of Oak Street unless they were whispering. The Blackwood house stood there like a waiting thing, 3 stories tall, its paint peeled like dead skin, its windows dark and hollow, watching the town the way a predator watches a wounded animal. I was a journalist chasing a story, and I thought the rumors were exaggerated. Ghost lights, voices in the walls, people vanishing without a trace. But rumors have a way of surviving when truth is too terrible to say out loud. Inside, the air was heavy and warm, wrong for an abandoned house in autumn, and it smelled faintly of iron and damp wood, like rain mixed with blood. My flashlight beam shook as it moved across the hallway, catching deep scratches in the walls, marks that looked less like damage and more like something had tried desperately to claw its way out. I told myself they were old, from animals or furniture, but the thought wouldn't settle. The house creaked, not from age, but with intention, each sound timed perfectly with my breathing, as if it were learning me. When I reached the living room, the temperature dropped suddenly, and I felt it then, that unmistakable sensation of being watched. The mirrors along the wall reflected more than they should have, shadows bending at impossible angles, and for a brief moment I saw a figure behind me, tall and thin, its face stretched too long, its mouth open in a silent scream. But when I spun around, there was nothing. I laughed, the sound brittle and hollow, but the house answered with a laugh of its own, low and wet, echoing from somewhere above. I should have left then. I didn't. The staircase groaned under my weight as I climbed, each step feeling like a countdown, and halfway up, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The dust on the stairs was disturbed, footprints leading upward, fresh, as if someone had just passed by moments before. I called out, my voice swallowed by the darkness, and that was when I heard the crying. It came from the second floor, a child sobbing, soft and broken, the kind that reaches into your chest and squeezes. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet moved forward on their own, drawn by the sound. The hallway upstairs was narrow and endless, doors lining the walls like teeth, and the crying grew louder until I stood before a door at the very end, its paint blistered, its handle stained dark. When I touched it, images flooded my mind. Children locked in darkness, prayers whispered through tears, hands reaching out from under beds, and I knew the house wasn't showing me memories, it was sharing them. The door creaked open, and the room beyond was empty except for a small rocking chair moving gently back and forth on its own. The crying stopped the moment I stepped inside, replaced by a whisper right beside my ear, a voice layered with many voices, saying my name even though I had never spoken it aloud. The door slammed shut behind me, and the temperature plunged so fast my breath turned white. The walls began to bleed, dark streaks seeping through the wallpaper, and the rocking chair overturned violently as something invisible rushed past me. I pounded on the door, screaming, but the house absorbed the sound like it was hungry. Then the lights went out. In the pitch-black silence, I felt fingers brush my arm, then grab it, ice cold and strong, pulling me backward. I fell, hitting the floor hard, and in the darkness I saw them, faces forming out of nothing, dozens of them, Men, women, children, all twisted in agony, their mouths opening and closing as if drowning. They weren't ghosts wandering the house. They were trapped inside it, fused into its walls, its floors, its very bones. A voice rose above the others, deeper and older, filled with rage and sorrow, telling me the truth, that the house had been built by a man who believed suffering purified the soul, that he had locked people inside to cleanse them, that their pain had soaked into the wood until the house itself had become alive, feeding on fear, growing stronger with every death. The floor beneath me softened, turning warm and wet, and I realized I was sinking, being absorbed, my memories flashing before my eyes as the house reached into my mind, tasting me. I begged, promised to leave, to tell the world, but the house didn't want promises. It wanted permanence. Just when I felt myself slipping away completely, the front door burst open downstairs and light flooded the hallway, accompanied by shouting. The pressure released, the hands vanished, and I was thrown forward as the room snapped back into silence. I was found unconscious by firefighters responding to reports of lights in the abandoned house. They said I was alone, that there was no sign of forced entry, no rocking chair, no blood. The house looked empty, harmless. They demolished it 2 weeks later after I published my article, and people said the town finally felt lighter, safer. But houses don't die easily. Sometimes late at night, I wake up smelling damp wood and iron, hearing a child cry from the end of a hallway that isn't there. And I know the truth they don't, that Blackwood House didn't disappear. It learned me, marked me, and one day when it finds a new place to grow, it will come back for the part of me it left behind.
It didn't end with the demolition, and I understood that the first time I noticed the cracks in my apartment walls forming the same shapes as the scratches inside Blackwood House, long and desperate, like fingernails dragged across bone. At first, I blamed stress, insomnia, the lingering effects of trauma, but the dreams came too vividly to dismiss. Hallways stretching longer than physics allowed, doors breathing softly as if alive, and that voice, layered and patient, speaking to me from just behind my thoughts. I tried to stop writing about it, tried to convince myself that the house had been a localized madness, a shared delusion fueled by fear and suggestion. But the house had already written itself into me, and it was still editing. People began to avoid me, not because of the article, but because of the way I listened when no one was talking, the way my eyes drifted to corners of rooms as if expecting something to emerge. Sounds followed me, wood settling where there was no wood, a slow rhythmic tapping that matched the rocking chair's movement, always just out of sight. One night, while washing my hands, I looked into the mirror and saw the hallway instead of my bathroom, saw doors lining the walls, saw myself standing at the far end, older, thinner, smiling with a mouth that wasn't quite right. The reflection spoke before I could move, telling me the house had learned a new trick, that it didn't need walls anymore. I shattered the mirror, but the sound of breaking glass echoed like laughter, and when I cleaned up the shards, one piece was warm, pulsing faintly as if it had a heartbeat. I started losing time. Hours vanished. I would find dirt under my fingernails, splinters in my skin, my shoes muddied with soil that smelled like Blackwood's foundation. The town's old residents began dying in their sleep, faces frozen in terror, autopsies inconclusive, and I knew without being told that the house was collecting what it had been denied. It didn't haunt places, it haunted histories, and Blackwood had been only its first anchor. I returned to the lot where the house once stood, now an empty scar of earth surrounded by a chain-link fence, but when I stepped onto the soil, I felt it shift beneath me, felt rooms unfold below the surface, intact and waiting. The ground whispered, promising release, promising silence, promising that the voices would stop if I just came home. I ran,
but running only taught it how fast I could move. The climax came on a night when the power failed across the city and every building groaned in unison, a choir of old wood and newer steel answering a call they didn't recognize. Walls bent inward, doors locked themselves, people screamed as their homes remembered things they never lived through. I felt the house fully then, vast and diffuse, no longer a single structure, but an idea made of pain, using me as its nerve center, its witness, its seed. I understood the final truth too late. It never wanted to kill me, never wanted to trap me inside it. It wanted to continue, and I was how it would be told. As I write this, the tapping has stopped, the crying has faded, and the air is warm in that familiar, wrong way. Somewhere nearby, wood is being cut, foundations poured, a new place taking shape. When the first door is hung, the house will open its eyes again. And when it does, it will remember you the way it remembered me, and it will not let you leave.